Hello coders, welcome to another How to Code Well Laravel tutorial. Today I'm going to teach how to pragmatically log someone in without having to go through a login form. As always, I'm going to show you how it works, then I'm going to show you the code, and then I'm going to build it from scratch. So let's get into the browser. This is what we're going to build. So we have three options: login as editor, login as manager, and then log out. If I was to click on login as editor, we've got welcome test user 1. You have the role of editor. If I click log out and click on login manager, we have welcome test user 2. You have the role manager. And I can log out there, and if I hit log out, we're going to go back to the login page. To prove that the users are actually logging in and out of the system, let's take a look at the sessions table. So at the moment we have logged out, right? And this sessions table has one record with the user ID of null for this particular session. However, if I was to log in as an editor and then refresh the query, we have a user ID of 1, and the page says, if I bring this down a wee bit, it says welcome test user 1, you have the role of editor. So if I was to click log out again and then refresh the query, the user ID is null. If I was to log in as, say, a manager, we have welcome test user 2, you have the role of manager. And if I was to refresh the sessions table, we now have the user ID of 2. So there's two very distinct users on this system. They're actually controlled by roles. We'll get to that perhaps in another lesson. But what I'm going to show today is how to pragmatically log users in and out of a Laravel application. Okay, let's take a look at the code. The first thing I'm going to show you is the seeder class. This is going to seed the database. And if we scroll to the bottom here, we've got different roles. So editor role, viewer role, manager role, and we're creating users. So the first user we're creating has the editor role. The second user we're creating has the manager role. Don't worry too much about these roles. I'll discuss this in a future tutorial, but just know that there's two users on the system and they have test2 and test1 at example.com emails. The next thing I'm going to show you is the routes file. So we have this route here, which is the dashboard, which goes to the index method. We also have a route which is login. So this is the route that has the list of the types of users that you can log into. And then we've got these three routes here: login as editor, login as manager, and log out. And we have these three methods: login as editor, login as manager, and log out. The magic happens when we pull out a user from the database, and we're going to do this in this case based on the role ID of the role that we've chosen. And then we're going to call auth login and then pass in the user. To log out, what we're going to do is call the logout method of the auth class and then redirect that back to login. Just for completeness, I'll show you what the views look like. So if we scroll down to resources and then views, there is a login.blade.php file. We have these three routes that we're calling: login as editor, login as manager, and log out. And we have the dashboard.blade where we have welcome auth user name. You have the role name. And I suppose I should show you the dashboard controller as well. We're getting the user from auth user, and we're also pulling out the role as well, and then supplying that to the dashboard blade file, passing in user and role as the parameters of the view. If this doesn't make any sense, don't worry, because I'm going to be taking you through this step by step from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the dashboard controller. I'm also going to delete the user controller. I'm going to comment out the routes like so. We're going to comment out this one. And yes, we're going to comment out the dashboard too. Don't worry too much about the check user role request middleware. I'm going to discuss this in another tutorial. What we're going to do though is focus on a user controller first. So I'm going to load up the terminal and I'm going to run make controller, and we're going to build the user controller. The user controller is going to have a public function logout, and this is going to run auth logout, and we need to import the auth facades as well. So there we go, auth logout, and that is going to return a redirection to logout. And if we went back to the roots here, we can see that there is a logout and the name is logout like so. Okay, so we can load that route. The next route that we're going to deal with is the login as editor. Let's add the public function login as editor. And this is going to take the request. And the first thing we're going to do is find the role of editor. So let's do role is equal to role where name is equal to editor. And we want to return the first one. And let's import role. Let's make sure that's loading up. There we go. So that's now imported the role model. And we should be returning the role where the name is editor, and we're getting the first one. And I can demonstrate that actually. If I scroll down to the roles and open that up, we can see that we have these three roles, editor, reviewer, and manager in our SQLite database. Now, obviously, you're going to have many users having many different roles, and you'll have many users having the same role. But in this example, we're just having one user has one role, and that's it. So let's just say user here is equal to the user model, and we want to get where the role underscore ID is the role that we've just found, ID like so. And again, we need to get the first one. Now, I also need to import the user from here, from the models. So there we go. We've imported role and we've imported user. So we've got the role, and now we should hopefully have the user. If we've got the user, we should be able to log in. So let's do auth, login, and then passing in the user like so. So that's where the magic is. Now, obviously, in a real world production application, you would be making sure that there is a role of editor and there is a user that has that role. As this is just a demo, I know that there is a user that has this role, and I know that the role exists. So let's log in the user, and then we redirect. So we do return redirect, and we're redirecting to / because / should take us to our dashboard controller, which I'm yet to create. So in the dashboard controller, which is way up here, we need to have a public function called index. We need to import the auth facade, and then in the body of the index method, we need to create a variable called user, and we assign that the value of auth and user like so. So that's going to pull the user out of the session. And we also need to get the role that the user has. So let's do role is equal to role model, and we want to get where ID is equal to user role ID like so. Let's just put that in there. And then after that, we return the view, which is dashboard, and we pass in the parameters of role and user. We need to set the role to be the role that we've just pulled out of the database, and we need to have the user set to the user that we've pulled out of the session. In our routes, we need to uncomment the login as editor because that's the method that we created earlier. I'm also going to uncomment the login page itself. This view is going to load the view where we have the list of the login options. We also now have to create the login as manager route too. So let's go back to the web.php, uncomment the login as manager line. So login as manager, it's going to the user controller again. It's calling the login as manager method, and the name is login as manager. So we need to create the login as manager method. This is actually the same as the login as editor, and all we're doing is just changing the role that we're choosing. So let's go to the user controller, And here where we've got the login as editor, where we're pulling out the editor, all we need to do at this stage is just copy this method and paste it underneath, changing the name of that as login as manager, and change the role that we're choosing from editor to a manager like so. From the browser on the login page, I can see a list of options available to us. Now, there are a couple of issues with this that we're going to have to debug along the way. If I clicked on the login as editor, we get this internal server error. Property name does not exist on the Eloquent Builder instance. Now, this is an interesting issue because there's actually two references to the name variable on this line. So we've got role name and we've got name of the user from the auth. So this is a problem on the dashboard.blade template file. So let's go back into the code and fix this issue. So it's either going to be an issue with the username or the role name. In the dashboard controller within the index method, what we're doing is pulling the role where the ID is the role ID on the user. Now, we need to change that to be first because we want to get the first record from here. But I've spotted another potential issue where within the controller, we're pulling the user from auth, but in the dashboard blade, we're also doing the same thing. So ideally, we don't want to be doing two requests like this. So let's change that to be the user, and we're pulling out the name. So let's save all of this and go back into the browser and see if this works. And here we can see that this has worked. We've got welcome test user 1. You have the role of editor. Now let's click log out. Log out is going to freak out like this, and it's going to say it's redirected too many times because we've got an issue on the user controller class. So let's go and take a look. In the user controller class, we are redirecting back to the log out page. This is not good. What we should be doing is redirecting to the login page like so. Let's go back to the browser and refresh our page. And now, refreshing the page, we've gone back to our log out screen. So if I can log in as an editor and log out, I should be able to log in as a manager and log out as well. So that is how you can log users in and out of Laravel. I also showed you some silly mistakes and things to look out for along the way. If you found this video helpful, do subscribe to the howtocodewell.net website and YouTube channel. If you think others might find this useful too, please do share it around. If you've got any comments or questions, put them in the comments section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, and I'll see you again in the next Laravel tutorial.